Let me ask you, and there are a number of recommendations, several recommendations that you have made to the Secretary to improve disclosure and information on airline imposed and government imposed fees, to improve airline reporting of revenues to the Department of Transportation. Can you walk us through, just for the record, to be clear, what some of those recommendations are in the GAO report?
Yes, sir. They fall into two basic categories. The first one is the matter for consideration that we offered to the Congress, in the sense of if the Congress wants to consider taxing the fees, and that is a policy decision that the Congress needs to make. But with regard to the recommendations that we made to the various departments, DHS, Agriculture, it was the same basic principle, that is full disclosure, transparency of fees. Let those departments, DHS, to let the DOT know what their refund policies are. Let the airlines know what those refund policies are across those agencies. Again, it's an attempt to be transparent and disclose to the flying public.
Mr. Rivkin, in your testimony, you state that in the proposed rulemaking that you're asking for comments on the cost and benefits of requiring the two prices be provided in certain airfare advertising. I wonder if you might explain that.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The basic principle is we want there to be a full fair price that includes all the non-optional prices, so that it really apples to apples can be compared. We are seeking comment really in an agnostic way, and hoping that we can become educated and learn through the rulemaking process what would be useful, is whether, in addition to that price, the mandatory price that includes fees, it would be helpful to the public to have another price that would be essentially the bare minimum price plus what people normally do and what they're normally used to being included. So a bag or two, perhaps a seat being selected, and see if there might be some standardized way of kind of comparing that notional price as well to give more information to consumers.
I mentioned earlier when I recognized you that I commend the Department of Transportation and the Secretary for being proactive and taking regulatory actions concerning consumer protection issues. And I'm pleased that you are moving forward with additional regulatory protections. I don't think regarding deceptive fares and deceptive advertising and greater transparency for airline fees, I frankly do not believe that we are going to get where we need to be unless we do this either through rulemaking or through action taken by the Congress. Mr. Baldanza said earlier that he did not object. I think he talked about an unfair competitive advantage if one airline does it and the other one doesn't. Obviously, if you do not have an objection to posting all of the fees, if everyone has to do the same, and he said he wouldn't have an objection, I assume, Mr. Ridley, you would say the same. Is that correct?
Given our situation where we have very few fees, we would not object.
Mr. Baldanza, let me ask you, in your testimony, written testimony, that you indicate that Spirit believes it is unfair to charge passengers for extra services that they do not use. What do you mean by that?
Thank you, Chairman. What I mean by that is that different customers ask for different things in terms of their air travel, and we think it's unfair to presume that a customer might need to check 2 bags or might need to have a certain service on board. So at Spirit, we think it's very important to only charge them what is necessary for their trip, but then make available in an optional basis other services and options that they may be able to use. We think this benefits consumers. We think this results in lower fares, and it gives customers the option to say, this is valuable to me, so I'll pay for it, or it's not valuable to me, and I can save the money.
you also indicate that in your written testimony that unbundled services do not impose any cost on airport infrastructure, that there is no cost imposed on airport infrastructure as a result of unbundled services. What do you mean by that? Are you saying that check bags do not put additional cost on an airport?
What I mean by that is that the costs of transporting the passenger are all included in the base fare, and the things we charge extra for, we don't believe add to the burden that the Aviation Trust Fund funds. So checked bags, for example, add cost to the airline, but they don't particularly use air traffic control. They don't particularly add airport-related costs to the airport. They add to the airline.
I would respectfully disagree with you. I think it's pretty clear that it does, but at this point I'll recognize the ranking member, Mr. Duncan.